everyone, and welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy. I'm the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. And how do I even talk about? It's not a long intro. I don't even want to talk for that long. But even to say two sentences about currently what's happening, I'll say this: following my depiction of the 21st century as Lynchian. And what I keep saying about that is that it feels like not surreal, not like there's menace below the surface of suburbia. I don't mean it like that. I mean like life at the moment feels like we are living in the blue box from Mulholland Drive, trapped between two worlds. I don't even want to interpret Mulholland Drive necessarily, but let's just say there are two worlds that Naomi Watts is in, and that blue box is somehow connecting them. And that's where we're all living these days. Because to see the corporate media depiction of the violence in LA, and then to see what LA is actually like, is so disorienting, because life here is very normal, and 99% of the violence that is being perpetrated by ICE and the cops, and not protesters. Anyway, I got a good episode today. If you want to take a break from feeling bad, that's what I've been doing with podcasts lately, using them to get an hour of respite. And I hope this gives you some of that, because wonderful guest, David Bazan, and if you don't know who he is, I'm going to read you his bio right now. Originally from Phoenix, Arizona, musician David Bazan started Pedro the Lion in 1995, and his first full-length album, It's Hard to Find a Friend, was released 3 years later on Jade Tree. In 2005, David recorded a more synthesizer-focused album as Headphones, and then a year later, Pedro the Lion broke up. David continued to record music under his own name, releasing albums on labels like Barsuck and Polyvinyl, and then in 2017, Pedro the Lion got back together and began a 5-album cycle, with each album focusing on a city that David grew up in. The most recent was last year's Santa Cruz, which came out on Polyvinyl/Big Scary Monsters. 2025 marks the 20th anniversary of Headphones' lone album, and to commemorate the occasion, Suicide Squeeze just released a remastered edition at the end of May, and folks, it's just as fantastic as it was back in 2005. This was really exciting for me. I first discovered Pedro the Lion, I think their second album, back in college at the radio station. Loved it. Loved Headphones. Man, that came out when I was in grad school, and I remember just walking around South Philly listening to it, contemplating, as all of my walks were accompanied by the contemplation of what the fuck am I doing? Do I really want to be doing this? Shouldn't I be doing comedy? Although not that coherent, not that articulate. But David is as cool and open as you would think from his lyrics, so we really got into it. I won't belabor this intro anymore. I won't spoil anything, so I will just say I hope you enjoy this episode. I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed talking to David. Coming up on the show, we got some comics people, folks. Kelly Sue DeConnick, Michael DeForge. What else? Daniel Littleton of Ida? That was really good. And I'm scheduling some new EPs as we speak, assuming the United States doesn't fall apart. At what point? I guess this is the question. I was thinking about Mark Maron ending WTF, and I wonder if part of it is just a kind of preemptive, like, I don't know how much longer this is all going to be coherent. Societally coherent. How much longer is the entertainment industry going to be viable? These are real questions that are coming to a head. But anyway, as long as I guess we all have some use for an hour or two away from the storm, I guess we'll all keep doing this. So stay tuned for future episodes. But for now, let's talk to David. feel lucky in that I feel like you have already thought about and processed a lot of this, considering you're in the middle of a 5-album cycle about the places you lived. Usually, and this is in terms of like the research I have to do, I love this because a lot of times I have to read like 10 different interviews with someone to just find out where they lived when they were. And now I'm just like, oh, well, great. Well, this is
just put on the record.
But let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Do you feel, and I've asked this to like Bob Mould, because he wrote a memoir, and other people who have written biographical kinds of things. Do you feel like you have had to condense your childhood in a certain way in order to form it into something? And I know it's not the same thing as a memoir, like writing lyrics or coming up with the way that you might want to put it into a song. But like, have you had to like mutate it, or is it just like, are you just kind of like let it out when you write that? Does that make sense as a question at all?
It does, very much so. I think the way that the answer forms in my head is having to do with choosing the scope of what I'm going to cover, because pretty quickly I realized I can't cover everything. You can't really do a thorough job. And so I think what's guided me is moments when I was a kid. Up till now, it's all been when I was either like a kid or up in like about 20. But there were just a lot of times where that kid needed insight or to express something that I didn't know how to back then. And so I've tended to stick to things that kind of fell into that category and let those things be representative of the whole. But yeah, because my goal in it wasn't necessarily to tell my story. It was to kind of go back and process these particular kind of memories that caused discomfort or anxiety or whatever when I would go to these places that I lived. When I was in Phoenix, I would drive around and I would just think, what is this feeling? Like, I don't have this anywhere else. And as I would start to think about and unpack and let certain memories kind of come to the surface, and some of them are the kind that they'll just wake you up at night sometimes. We're like, oh, I was mean to this kid, and like it never got made right, and like it started with that kind of thing. But just anything that you might tell a therapist or something, I don't know, just whatever. It felt like there were memories that needed my attention, needed my care and sort of processing power that I have now as a grown-up. And so that tended to be how I condensed or chose what to cover. And they happen enough and are peppered around everything, and they're all influenced by the details, the autobiographical details. We drove, we lived in this town, and then we lived in this town. And so it's an opportunity to kind of give the background of that stuff, which fills out a little bit of the story. But it really is just about those, just kind of like, I was having trouble in my life as a grown up and think all these memories kind of added up to this, that I need to take care of myself.
Did it work in that way? Like, I mean, you went into therapy at some point, right? If I remember reading correctly, right? I think around the same time I did, in the early teens, 20 teens.
Yeah.
But as an adjunct to therapy, do you think you were able to process, or maybe this is a better question, do you think it was which do you think was, what did you get out of therapy and what did you get out of creatively processing? Because to me, that's the like platonic ideal of the creative act, is taking something inside of you and being able to process it into something artistic.
Yeah. I think before I went to therapy, I didn't feel like my way of being in the world or my concerns were valid at all. And talking to a therapist, I experienced like just that what I was dealing with was stuff I came by honestly, and that I my feelings were valid and my concerns were valid, and even if I, had and was making mistakes, like it was a good starting point to just believe, yeah, that the thoughts I was having are worth having, and are worth verbalizing to somebody, or showing up in my work. And I think it gave me kind of permission or something to actually do this process of writing these records. And the record writing has really been very effective, because I had to look at myself in an honest way that, it's for posterity. Like these are public sort of expressions that I'm making. And so I wanted to be as truthful as I could with myself, because I kind of knew, like, if I'm bullshitting here, like, I'll know later and I'll know in front of everybody, and whether everybody knows or not, like, I don't want to feel that way. Like, I want this to be really what, me really connecting with myself, and also taking seriously and the thing that I came to terms with was just how much masking of my feelings that I had been doing since I was a tiny kid. And, why was I doing that? And, then to realize that, and then to try to not do that in public for the first time, like, it was difficult. That would have been on Havasu, kind of where I crossed that threshold. And I had to take a year off from making the record because I had to grow as a person to be able to even do that.
Ooh, that resonates. That is, yeah, that's a lot of like what I went through.
Yeah.
And my therapist described it as, I don't know if this is what you meant by masking, but basically, like, I was feeling feelings. It's not like I was like repressing them necessarily, but I would feel them. But it was more like I was like staring at them through a window. Like I my hands like pressed up against the glass, like looking at the feeling through the happening on the other side, like outside. And I'm just kind of like, that's over there. And then I wasn't.
Yeah, that's over there.
Yeah, I wasn't interacting necessarily. I wasn't expressing, and it wasn't until therapy that it allowed me, or that, like, talking through it allowed me to actually break through the glass, I guess, is if I'm going with this metaphor.
Yeah. Well, and for me, a layer of I had a similar relationship with it, but there was also the layer where people would be concerned about me and wonder how I was doing. And I would always be like, I'm good, like, because, like, I wanted to be good. I wanted to be fine. Like, I'd moved to a new town, and you got to, make all new friends as quick as you can. And, I didn't want to show up being bummed about everything that's going on in my life. I wanted to show up, being like ready to be friends and have a good time. And so it always felt like I'm saving this processing till later. And I thought of it like, on the first song on Santa Cruz, it talks about maybe later I'll be able to tell these stories to a friend that I don't that I'll make later when we finally stay where we're going to live or whatever. And so there was always this sense of like I knew you weren't supposed to like bottle it up and shove it down and bury it forever. Like, I didn't plan on doing that, but it turned out that that's what was happening anyways, because it never wound up being the right time to sort of reveal those things, I guess.
Now, are you, when you're younger, are you not given the chance to express yourself? Is it not modeled around you in your family or in your community? And so you don't know how to? Or a third thing, possibly?
I mean, I think I was just covering for the people around me. Like, I was protecting the the story of our lives, the way that it was being told by, my parents or my church community or whatever. And so, yeah, I think I was trying to protect other people's feelings. Um,
Ah. And
yeah,
so
I
then
think
you
I felt
just,
responsible.
I see. And then so you just push it all down because it's,
Yeah, it would make them feel bad.
uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, there's a lot of reasons why people do this. I think firstborns kind of can do it a lot where you're kind of somehow or another you get parentified early, like as a toddler or whatever, where you have to take care of the grown-ups' feelings. And if you do a really good job at that, you're rewarded, and that becomes kind of how you operate in the world. And it was some version of that, I think.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Okay. So wait, how do your parents end up in Phoenix in the first place? I know I had a friend grow up in Phoenix. He said it was hot and flat, and that was all I knew
It
about it.
is both those things. So my mom was born and raised there, and so her extended family was all there. And when my mom and dad met at Bible college near Santa Cruz, and when they got married, and my dad got a job at a church in Phoenix, and that made sense because that's where a lot of support from my mom's family was there, and so yeah, they moved there, and he worked in two or three different churches while we lived there, and then um, as we moved around, it was another church here in the in every other town, and but yeah, it you know it, it was having everything to do with my mom being from
Hmm.
there.
So every move is prompted by going to work at a different church, and it feels very academic, right? I was I was a philosophy professor, and when I was about to do
Yeah,
my dissertation, part of like my got in my head, and why I eventually left was I'm like, I'm just gonna have to go to wherever the job is, and if that might
right,
not be where I want to live, but I'm gonna have to go to
right,
the middle of Indiana or whatever.
right. Yeah, that I mean, thinking academia, it's even more that that way because in the last however many 10, 20 years, there's fewer um, positions. But yeah, I mean, it always felt really hopeful to me. Every move felt like, okay, this is the one, or like that was just how my mindset was. And it also because church was my kind of social life, or it played a big role in my social life. Yeah, I was always looking forward to, yeah, the possibility of landing in a new place, and again, just like making friends and trying to get normal as fast as possible.
Yeah.
But it was like it was really interesting. I mean, I really got to see a lot of how leadership and authority within the denomination that I grew up in works and doesn't work. And but yeah, it was definitely, it was an adventure that I don't think I would wish away. It all felt pretty meaningful, but at the same time, it was difficult to do all that.
Do you mean just the moving was difficult, or do you mean when you said like the leadership, how it worked and didn't work? That was the part that was difficult.
I think all of it, probably the moving was the most difficult part. But just seeing like my what I would have characterized as minor injustices within these different churches was eye opening and kind of tempered my expectations of the world. And you just see little abuses of power that have an effect. Like we had to move because of them in a couple of cases, and just because the person in charge was being shitty, and
Okay.
got confronted about it, and so then it was just time to go.
Okay.
um,
And so it's interesting. So the way that you're describing it, it's like your dad has a lot of integrity, and when he sees this kind of stuff, he's like, I don't want to be around this, or I don't want my family to be around this.
It was just like, hey, this needs to be addressed. Like this isn't going to work. This in one case it's embezzlement, and in another case it's like a rage situation, and so it just was, yeah. You just saw just how human these sort of leaders could be, and kind of how unaccountable or kind of obstinate or prideful or what, they just were the boss, and it's like you're either with me or against me kind of vibes in some cases. And so yeah, and then it's just like, okay, kids and family, it's like it's time to go.
I mean, how do you process this kind of stuff? Do you process it in terms of faith, in terms of forgiveness? Like you see these people, they have failings, and you're like, well, okay, but they are, that is what happens, and so I can forgive them. Or do you like, I have real problems with that, because I'm Jewish, and for me, the core of Judaism is a moral project. Yeah. And so I have a real difficulty with people who use it as a either hypocritically use it, or who are just like shoving that moral project in the mud, if that even makes sense as a, do you know what I mean? Like how, like when you're a kid, like how are you actually like processing that stuff?
I think somehow I had a lot of room for forgiveness, to forgive people and to give people the benefit of the doubt, and to, but it ran out at some point. I think I sort of had this habit of like, I saw some of these people involved in a different place, and one of the not the main dude, but like one of the family members was like very apologetic to me, and I just had nothing but grace for them to in return, and just like, yeah, I get it. And it's like, the person involved, it was not her fault at all. But so I remember just feeling like I had an endless amount of kind of forgiveness, and that I always had this optimistic sense of just like, I'm going to get where I need to go. We're moving forward. But somehow I ran out of that at a certain point, and things really started to collapse. And I understood, like, I think I needed better, boundaries for myself and guidelines, and the ability to be like, I forgive you, but also I don't have to be in situations where I'm constantly needing to forgive people over and over again. Like I can be more choosy about where I, spend my time and who I spend my time with. And that was something I learned. I don't know. I've always had a way of giving people the benefit of the doubt. And so in that case, as a kid, that was how I responded to it. And like, I could carry my own hurt. And I just thought, like, in the future, there will be enough and we'll be able to sort all this out, and for now there's not enough, and it's painful, but like I trust, like I'm optimistic. And I think that is true, generally speaking, that there is a way for there to be enough, hopefully for each of us in our personal kind of economy and our nervous systems or whatever. But I needed to take ownership of it in a different way than I was, and quit kind of trusting the various systems of, my life.
Yeah. Yeah. I gotta tell you, I got a tough time with resentment. There's a lot of people to resent for stuff, and it's really difficult. I have not figured out, I've been, I was started therapy in 2013. I've not figured out how to not resent people for their failings.
Yeah, that is tough. I've tried to make a project of getting a little bit more in touch with my resentment, so that I wound up with healthier boundaries. It sounds a little messed up, but like, because I didn't feel anger all that well, or all that often. I did have anger, but I wasn't I didn't feel comfortable feeling it or expressing it or
Huh.
siding with myself enough to do that. And so that's been a big project of, and it's been a good byproduct of making these records too, is just being a little bit more balanced in how I can feel my own emotions, the whole range of them.
Yeah. I mean, this is just cheap Freudian stuff that I'm about to ask you, but like, is music the way that you channel the anger out? Or did you just, when you were younger, did you just hold it in you?
I didn't feel like I had a right to be angry. Like I didn't feel like if I was being actively hurt, like I could access anger and like get away from it. But like, I think I just sided with other people's concerns so pathologically that I didn't feel, yeah, I didn't feel entitled to be offended or angry. I felt like things were just kind of my fault. And
Like, do you mind if I ask, is there like
yeah,
a specific thing you feel comfortable talking about? Like, what do you mean, like, where you are, you're saying that you didn't feel like entitled to your own feelings?
I think, I mean, you know, I'm an ADHD kind of person, and had a hard time, um, keeping my attention where it was supposed to be as a kid. And I think I internalized that as sort of being bad, as like bad behavior.
Uh huh.
Um, and it really interacted with like my religious life, where I felt like I wasn't um, eligible for God's love because I was kind of hopelessly bad because I couldn't really keep a straight line. Like I would just get distracted and do something else, not anything necessarily horrible, but just like not staying on what I was supposed to do, not being able to keep my focus on the things that I was supposed to do. And so, yeah, I think I just internalized a sense of like just being bad. And
Oh,
so it was like, I felt great. Yeah, I felt grateful that I wasn't in trouble all the time when I wasn't in trouble or something. And so,
that's really rough. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's funny how the way that we internalize stuff, the way that ideas get introduced, especially when high control religion plays a part. Because then there's other people telling you, not just your parents, but like people in your community who are telling you some things that can get in deep and can be really wrong, like really harmful. And none of us knew what was going on then. And so I just kind of, and I think for a lot of people, those things happen before. I mean, all of this stuff was going on for me when I was like 2 and 3 years old. So like no one knew that. You don't look at a 3-year-old and be like, oh, they're thinking these existential things that are going to fuck them up forever. But some of them are.
Yeah. So you were a very thoughtful kid then, it seems, right? You were was it all internal? Like you were holding it in, or do you
Yeah.
have, oh, okay.
Yeah. It was so yeah, I lived in my head in like um, in a pretty big way, which is, I look back on it and it's kind of nice. Like I liked aspects of that a lot, but there was other parts of it that didn't allow for the most helpful kind of processing. And so yeah, you wind up internalizing ways of thinking and being that you need a therapist to help you unpack when you're 40 or whatever.
Right.
The
Was
case
there
may be.
was there ever the thought though that if you have this capacity for forgiveness for others, that you should have that capacity of forgiveness for yourself?
That's the project. Yeah, I mean that's the realization certainly. And it goes in line with like, oh, I'll clean the house for someone else, but not for me.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Okay, I get that. Yeah. Were your parents, did they recognize what was going on with you, or were they, I think maybe you're a little older than me, so I have a feeling like maybe they had their own stuff going on, which seems like that generation of parents, but I'm
I
curious.
think so. I mean, that was part of what I was really good at. was hiding anything that was maybe going on because I needed to perform, or I needed to be a certain way, or to try to support the family project in like a certain way. Um, so I don't really know what they knew. I don't think, yeah, they weren't tracking certainly with what was really going on, and I think they have understood later things, and there was some kind of comfort there. I think comfort's not really the right word, but just some validation there where, you know, these things that I was experiencing and were really my reality. Like, yeah, for for my dad to even glimpse that a little bit and see something different than what he saw was meaningful um, for me. But yeah, and it, I was thinking about being a parent the whole time I was a kid, because I didn't fully know, but I was aware like that grown-ups just really don't know what's going on with kids,
Yeah.
is what my experience was. And so I wanted to be a different kind of parent, where like I would remember what it felt like, and that's been good actually. Like I know you can't always um try to do that and then successfully do it, but in this case that's something that's actually kind of worked out okay. Like I I do get what my kids are going through in a way that I think is because I was paying attention to that um, gap as a
Mm.
kid,
I
and
mean,
just thinking like, when do you grow up enough where you forget what it's like, or where you can't remember, you can't relate to just a kid feeling so messed up, like not knowing how to process or yeah.
I mean, I think if you are involved and you are aware, and I don't just mean of your kids, and I'm saying this as someone who doesn't have kids, but just
Sure.
a thought, and you can tell me how correct or incorrect it is. But if you are someone who is present, period, in life, I don't think you'll ever not be able to relate to your kids. Is that true?
I think that sounds pretty true. I mean, to be present and to be paying attention, and as we were talking, like it's true, like you can be present outwardly and like tuned into other people's emotions and not your own, and then that can create problems. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
it's I've understood more and more like that it is good to be aware of what my kids are experiencing, and to track their trying to track with them, but also like I have to be really good about doing that for myself too, because if I don't, I wind up causing problems that I can track that my kids are experiencing because of me, but I'm not actually able to help or do something because I have to take care of um, myself or my own routines, or something. And so finding that balance and realizing like, yeah, it's to be sensitive to other people is can be a superpower, but like it has to be in balance with you being sensitive to your own needs. And um, but yeah, I think it's true what you're saying about being present, that
Yeah.
it really does cut through a lot of problems communicating.
Yeah. I mean, how many younger siblings did you
I
have?
had one. Yeah, she was 2 years younger than me.
But you were deputized into kind of parenting her and your parents, or like how did that, because you said earlier that you had kind of been adultized a little early to help kind of parent your parents in a certain way, but are you basically doing that for everyone, caring for everyone, or how's it working?
I had well, so I wouldn't have I wouldn't have known that then, or talked about it that way, but I felt like I had jobs.
Haha.
Like one of my jobs was like one time I expressed my needs as like a toddler, and it really hurt my mom's feelings. And so in that moment, one of my jobs was to not hurt my mom's feelings. And then as an older brother, my job was to make things fair for my sister, and to And I took that really seriously, which meant to really understand her experience and try to create fairness there. Like, where, I really wanted the bigger cookie, or I wanted more chocolate milk or whatever it was. But like, I worked really hard to make things like really even, so that, or even give her a little more, or, those little ways of like learning how to be conscientious and learning what power is and what an abuse of power is, and that we have the choice. And so like 3 4 5 years old, like, this is, I just happened to be in this space where these were the things that I was paying attention to. I wanted to, and part of it is I wanted to do a good job with all these things, because I was experiencing scarcity in terms of emotional communication or attention or these sorts of things. And so you think, if I just do a better and better job at these jobs that I have, that eventually my needs will be taken care of too. And so I think that it was just one of those kind of, I don't know if it's a catch-22 exactly, because I think it can work out, but I didn't know to say anything about it. I just thought, keep doing your job, do it better and better. And there's a lot of good in just being a thoughtful older brother.
Yeah.
So so it was like all good, wholesome stuff, but it just was a little not, just like a little off in a way that created a lot of like, I was carrying a lot and I was really lonely in it, but I didn't know how to, I was 5.
Yeah, of course.
So
Yeah.
I didn't really know.
At 5, I'm playing with like
communicate.
big wheels outside, or like, Transformers or something like that. Like the idea of having to deal with my parents' emotions didn't come into the picture until at some point I know that like if I was a brat, they didn't like that. And so I was like, well, maybe I don't do that. But like the idea of like caring for my parents' emotions, I don't even know like at what point that entered into the equation. I mean, maybe my 20s, like that's a lot for a 5-year-old. Like, were you conscious of this? Like when you said, you expressed your needs and it hurt your mom's feelings, which is like, that to me seems very like the core of something for you. Tell me if I'm wrong about that.
Sure.
Because that shouldn't happen.
Yeah. Well, and, I think the situation, like now that I'm a grown up and I've been married and like I know how all these things go, like, my parents were kids, they were like so many of the people in their generation, and still obviously people have kids early, but like, when you're 20, like my daughter's 20, and I think, I was born, I think I'd have to do the math, but like within a couple of years, like my mom had me the same age as my 20-year-old is now. And I just think, man, that poor lady, like,
right.
Like this is just like so much happening, you're supposed to get married, you get married, you're supposed to have kids, you have kids. For most people in our parents' generation, it was kind of compulsory, especially if you were in like religious community.
Yeah.
And it's just way different now. Like most people have a choice about getting married and having kids now. So like I have a lot of, like I understand how it worked and where my mom was coming from. And it's just sort of the culture that we each kind of come up in has each subculture has its kind of pitfalls, and some of them are pretty exaggerated in certain time periods. And I think it was hard for a lot of young Christian moms in the 80s.
Yeah,
it was a pretty lonely time to be a young Christian mom in the 80s, and it created situations where some of the kids experienced some of the off, the runoff from that.
Yeah. Is there a certain energy though, in the church in the 80s in Reagan's America, there is there's the kind of like synergy between Reagan and the evangelical
Yes.
church. Like, is there a feeling? Is there a vibe?
Yeah, I mean, it's abuse of power. I mean, it just is. That's what it
Oh,
is.
there
All the
wasn't
way
like,
down. This
oh God. Okay.
and not like all the men were. It just was like a culture where I feel like the more women's voices are allowed to be kind of heard in a community or in a subculture or whatever, the more awareness of everybody's experiences being had, and more awareness of abuses of power that are going on. You know, everybody gets to sort of see and hear how things really are, and I think just by virtue of the fact that women really didn't have a voice in Pentecostal Christianity, I mean, in evangelical Christianity, in the United States in the early '80s, it just means abuses of power are gonna thrive or whatever. And I think that Reagan is a dickhead and was a power abuser himself. And, um, you know, I think it was a culture of hubris and insensitivity to marginalized experiences.
Yeah.
Certainly
Dave.
the way that the Reagans dealt with the AIDS,
Yeah.
like just all
All of
around,
it.
like
Yeah.
marginalized experiences were not being taken seriously or heard. And I think a lot of women were you in that situation.
Dave, I asked that question being like, thinking like, oh, well, what's the positive? Was there like a feeling like, yay? And then you were like, nope, not at all. It was all
bad.
It was just bad. There was no
we were just sowing seeds of destruction. Yeah.
Because a lot of the times I do focus on the negative aspects of organized religion. And I do want to, like, there are, again, like I go back to Judaism. For me, the moral project at the center of Judaism is very positive, and there's something very good about it. Yeah. And I think the moral project at the center of Christianity is extremely positive. When it ends, when it, you have people like the Berrigans, like Daniel Berrigan, or you have people like,
for sure.
Dorothy
Day.
Yes. Right. And so I'm like, okay, what is that? But you were just like, nope, there was no triumphalism. It was all just power abuse. I'm like, oh, okay.
I mean, I think things go in waves, and, there's a lot of crosstalk in the culture about what Christianity, what that moral project really is, and in Judaism too. And I think that if you break it down, like, it winds up, Jesus lifted up voices that weren't being heard, and he opposed the voices that had the power. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I do think that is a project worth, pursuing. It's just that Christianity can do the exact opposite of that while still being called Christianity by half the people or more than half the people, whatever. And so I agree. I think that project of, it sounds simplistic, but just like justice for everybody, and the poor and the people who are without get their basic needs met, and all these things that seem to really irritate modern day like MAGA Christians or whatever. But yeah, I mean, and Reagan was no champion of the poor. He tricked us all into trickle down, and and the rich got richer, and and they're still getting richer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I find so much value in the moral project at the center of religion.
Of course.
Because to me, that's where the meaning comes from. I was thinking about this morning. The more that fascism kind of descends on America, the more I'm like, should I run for office? I mean, is that even a thing anymore? Have the power structures become so tight that even if I could like get on city council or something here in LA, like it wouldn't matter. Like I don't know. But like, I think in these moments where like I read the news and it's like driving me crazy, and I imagine running for office and giving like a stump speech about like bringing back meaningfulness to life and the moral project and all this kind of stuff. And I think about how that really is it. That's it. Like there really is nothing else in life.
Yeah.
Like I think about this is so off topic, but like I think a lot about how much stuff do you need? Like my wife and I we have our pets. We have food. Like what else do you really need? I don't understand. Right. I don't understand that kind of thinking, and I don't understand how it's meaningful, or maybe it's not me. Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, I'm just babbling at this point.
I mean, I think about that too all the time. There is enough to go around. It seems like it would be of an enormous value to everybody in the culture if everybody was, everybody's basic needs were met in a stable way, and then people could be rich relative to that, but if people are starving and living outside, they don't want to, and like, it creates instability for everybody. Like I don't get why people don't, they're like, well, we're fine with this instability. I just want to be powerful enough so that I can insulate myself from it, because there will always be this instability. That feels cynical to me, but I think is probably what some people are thinking. That we can't really solve the problem. So I just want to be as rich as I can so that I can be insulated from the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, for sure. I mean, okay. Maybe you can't speak to this, but I'll ask anyway. How does that moral project get turned upside down? Like, how do the leaders of the church, like, to me, this is where I don't understand, because I'm not Christian, but like, I don't understand the very tenets of, like you were talking about before. Jesus's teachings seem very explicit to me, in the same way that the 10 Commandments for me seem very explicit. And it doesn't seem, there's no asterisk next to thou shalt not kill. Like there isn't like a kind of like, there's no paragraph being like, well, you can do it in this case.
Right.
So how does it get mutated so much?
I mean, I obviously don't know. I tend to think that the way that that morality based on authority is easily corruptible, and morality based on empathy is less easily corruptible. And so when it's the authority of Scripture, then you're going to have endless arguments about that authority and how to apply it and who has the authority to say this or that or the other thing. And I think that you see those hierarchies develop, and then it really just is about holding on to that power. And whereas, morality that's fueled by empathy, you just look around and see, well, this harm is happening to this group of people or whatever. And so let's see what are we doing that we can change or that could help, or, I do think that it, like the inerrancy of Scripture and arguing about, just all of the arguing and trying to be right. And
I get that, because coming from a philosophical background, it's all that kind of like,
right.
That kind of like, well, no, this is Kant's argument. This is Nietzsche's argument. This is, whatever. And at the end of the day, someone just has to say, well, I don't really care. I'm just going to be evil. And no amount of arguing is you're not going to make them see the light from that. So it really is. That makes a lot of sense. Empathy based morality as opposed to a logical
authority
syllogism. Yeah.
I mean, that's what it feels like to me. But everybody's got to live and have a day and do, we all have to make choices about how we're spending our time and money. And in the end, I used to be concerned about Christian apologetics or trying to have a systematic way of describing my theology, the theology of what I think, and is it, based on this idea and this idea. And I think it's often enough to just try to, do right by yourself and your family and your, the place where you live and your neighbors. And obviously we have to make choices about policy and people that are outside of our community or whatever. But I don't know. There's a lot of goodness and kindness, and just charitable ways of interacting with our fellow humans, that I don't really have to know about the afterlife to do that,
Yeah.
And sometimes I think thinking you do know about the afterlife can make it harder to just be kind somehow.
Yeah. It's interesting too. You saying this puts into focus, there has been this push against empathy in the last couple months. And in fact, someone wrote a book
Isn't that crazy?
The Sin of Empathy. And it's because you can't argue against it, right? There isn't really an argument against it. It is a feeling, and a feeling of meaningfulness and a fullness that you get from empathy with others, with your community. So with people outside of your community, with finding that connection. So how do you argue against? And that must be why it's under attack.
Yeah, because their authority can't. They don't have authority over people who are motivated by empathy, because they're going to embrace lifestyles that the authority people don't think is cool, or if they think it's sinful or whatever. And it's like, I probably would just keep repeating myself, but I think empathy and a morality based on empathy is a threat to authority structures, and you see their responses to it.
Okay, we're right at the end, and there's a couple things that I'm still curious about. You had said earlier that you would forgive these kind of I don't know how you want to phrase it, but like these people, the authority figures in the church that were maybe twisting their authority to benefit themselves, right? And you hit a point where you couldn't forgive them anymore. And I was curious, like, how old were you, and what exactly happened? Was it just all internal, or did you like act out?
No, I mean, I think it was quite late. I mean, I think I might calculated it like 6 years ago. I was in my 40s.
Oh, wow.
And I think I just lost hope that, like, I think by kind of living that way, I had betrayed myself so often, and that I had lost a connection with myself that would allow me to kind of turn it around, or to find some momentum or something. And then I just kind of lost hope that the abuses of power that I was sort of still experiencing in my life, without going into any detail, I just lost hope that would ever change. And so it was kind of like I just kind of held out hope in a general sense for so long, and then it just went away kind of, I don't know if unexpectedly is the right word, kind of dramatically. And so then I had to take care of myself. I had to figure out, like, okay, whatever. My subconscious was like, hey, bud, it's time. Like, and I was like, okay, I'll do whatever I need to do to not want to die, or not want to, whatever. Like,
right. Yeah, of course.
Step back from the precipice. And so I started making big changes and started to give people the benefit of the doubt less often, and just be like, it's cool. Like, this is my read on this is this, and I'm gonna trust my intuition and discontinue this connection or whatever. And it just took a long time because I just was raised to be like, turn the other cheek, like your forgiveness, let it be inexhaustible. Like,
Yeah.
and I just misunderstood the part where I had to take care of myself at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
That wasn't, yeah, I didn't get that part.
Well, let me ask this then, because in my mind, I created a narrative where this happens in like your teens, and the idea of like making music again. This is like, it's such cheap Freudianism, but like you get this breaking point, and then music takes over. But the way you're telling it is that even in this kind of like denial of self, this like infinite forgiveness for other people, total denial of self. I don't know about total, but definitely denial of self, right?
Yeah.
How do your existential wants and desires form in that? Like, how, if you're like kind of not tending to yourself, how do you even know what you want out of life? How do you even gain the capacity to create? I mean, I think you create meaningful art, and you created meaningful art.
Thanks.
When I first encountered you, I don't know, in the late 90s, I think your second album was when I first started listening to you. Like it's not like it's something that happened later in your life. You were able to do this early on. So like, I'm curious, like, how did that form if you are not tending to yourself or not paying attention? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think it was the one way in which I had an outlet to do that. It was sort of the first time that I was really myself, was in song. Like I expressed grief, and I expressed, the mask kind of, it got more complex once I started making music, because before then, I don't know if anybody really knew the kind of like heaviness that I was carrying. Cause it's like, I like to have a good time and joke around and laugh and get silly and stupid. And, so I think when It's Hard to Find a Friend came out, I really felt like my friend group and the community that I was a part of maybe saw me more clearly than they had ever seen me, because I had never expressed these parts of me. And I kind of, and that was a start. That was a very positive thing, and allowed me to kind of, to kind of stay. Like I was starting to deal with the buildup when I started making music, but I was also creating more and more buildup by the choices that I was making in my life, not fully understanding what I was doing. And so, if I had understood those choices better, if I had, I might have stopped making trauma for myself in my 20s. And would have run out of grief to sing about, and would have written, I don't know, about parties or whatever people write about. But instead, I kept making hardship for myself because of how I thought operated in the world, and so then I still was sort of. My hope is that through this album making process with these 5 records and and everything I made, the Headphones record, all this stuff, that I'm working through this stuff and can get to an ending point. But I also have to, in my life, quit creating these situations in which I'm experiencing more trauma. And that's on me to figure out. And so that's been simultaneously, like I've been making this more recent work, processing this big stuff, but also simultaneously learning how to take care of myself and to, be in balanced situations that my nervous system can deal with. And,
Yeah. I mean, did your parents want something for you? Did they have a specific, if not an occupation, like a direction for you?
Well, I mean, evangelical Christian parents 100% all do. And that is for you to be a believer, for you to believe, to continue to believe the things that they believe. And so in that sense, yeah, um, they're they were pretty supportive and chill about me making music for my job. That's pretty uncommon. I don't think a lot of people really have the respect for music as a job that they think they do because they love music so much. You find out people really think it's not valid over time.
Uh-huh.
And so I was really feel really lucky that they were supportive in that way. Yeah. But yeah, I think it was heartbreaking for them that I didn't wind up being a believer the way that they raised me to be.
Mm-hmm. But they were okay with your existential direction. That's again, I think it's interesting that there's all these very like kind of complicated. I don't like. There's no like. I can't like put a circle around everything, or I can't. Here's a neat and tidy narrative. But there's a lot of like, kind of. You have these like. I don't even know how to characterize it. These moments of transformation that are also bounded. Does that make sense at all? Am I maybe reading stuff right, or is that a weird way of characterizing it?
Yeah. Well, so you mean like when in like making work, like making songs and records, that those would be the moments of transformation?
Anything, just like these moments in your life where like there are like you are changing, but you're also hemmed in a certain way. Either like you are holding stuff in, or there's outside boundaries on you that are not allowing you to kind of fully transform.
Yeah. It's I mean, I think you're right. I think growing up, in my case, growing up in the religious environment that I did, in the way that you internalize all these things, like no one's holding. I mean, certainly when you get married, and there are things that you're locked into unless you choose to stop. But I think for me, as a kid, there was just this attempt to rein myself in. And so I had all these strategies to sort of rein myself in. And as I kept experiencing scarcity in my life, it became that much more crucial to rein myself in my thinking, because why I felt like I was experiencing scarcity because I was fucking up, because I was a fuck up. And if I could just rein myself in enough, and so a lot of that being hemmed in is just me doing my best to try to like hit some mark that I didn't quite know what it was or how to hit it. And yeah, so it's in some cases, I've understood that somebody's perception of me could be communicated to me, and I will always tend to amplify what they're saying in one direction or another, usually negatively. And those were all defense mechanisms so that I could, like if you keep the naysayer in your head as the main driver, then you can keep yourself from running amok more easily. That's the flawed thinking. And so I think I just had like a lot of layers of that. And so there were things that I was hemmed in by structurally from external forces, but I think if I wasn't doing that to myself the whole time as well, that I would have been a lot more free. Yeah. And that's kind of what I'm embracing now, is just like, okay, maybe somebody is mad at me. That's okay.
That's very difficult. I still have a lot of trouble with that.
It's hard to do.
Yeah.
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 It's just like, well, I still got to do my day and I got to do my thing, and I can't be cowering and feeling like, oh, what about, just like, hopefully I'll make that right. And if not, then, everybody's really trying here. Like, I know this for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So. Okay. One last question then. Yeah. Knowing that you start making music or start writing songs while you're still kind of in this process, how did you have the capacity to honestly express yourself in song? And I say that as someone who, when I was writing music in my late teens, early 20s, anytime that I got close to a real emotion, I like ran away from it. And all the lyrics I wrote then were so oblique that they made Pavement look like look like Paul Simon. Like it's
yeah. I think I got really lucky and I had some undeniable moments where a thing came out together, like a lyric, like one line, and it came out with the melody and a chord progression or whatever. And even like in front of somebody, and they were like, "Oh, dude, that's for real what you just said." Like, and I'd be like, I might have shied away from it, but like I knew, like I had just some good experiences where like I said something that felt really true. And I mean, I think if there's anything heartbreaking about my catalog, it's that it's like all optimism. Like I really think that like if I can understand, if I can get at the truth of these things, if I can be honest with myself, if like the things will get better. And so even though I kept making choices and was locked into some things that kept creating deeper and deeper problems for me, I still believed in the process of sunlight and expression and making your unknown known and trying to know yourself to even do that process. Like I believed that there was something powerful in that. And I experienced it even while I was still struggling through years and decades of problems. And so I think and then once you do it a few times and you experience that in a room with other people, where people who have similar experiences and they resonate, it's just like, well, yeah, this is the shit. I mean, this is important. And so then you wind up every time you put out a record, you feel crazy because it's like so exposing. I talked to some of my friends who make records, and we're sitting there at lunch, just like we're both reeling from, our new records being out, and are like, are we crazy? And it's just like, no, this means you're doing the work. It means you're actually taking the risk.
Yeah.
Because you feel this way. And so, high five.
I mean, this is almost too pat, but like there's almost a kind of salvation through the creative act.
I think so.
Yeah.
I hope so. I feel like I've experienced it. I don't know if there's ever like an end to salvation. Like, I don't know that there's like a once and for all salvation, but there are these little moments of grace and transcendence and that can save you from things, from situations, from misunderstandings.
Yeah. And it's just about getting over the fear of being vulnerable. And if you can catapult over that, then you can get to those moments of transcendence.
That's true. And I think we all have the capacity for it. And maybe songwriting is like a bridge too far, but sometimes it's just in a conversation with another person. That's why having beers with a friend can be so nice, because something happens, your inhibitions, and all of a sudden you're speaking honestly about something, and you can have a little bit of salvation over a drink with a pal that you can be honest with.
Dave, thank you so much for joining me. This was an absolute delight to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Oh, me too. Yeah, thank you.
And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye.